Tenet is the best video game movie ever made. Hello, welcome to Just My Thoughts. I'm your host, Khaleel Ward. On this episode, I'll be talking about Tenet again. Happy New Year. I'm going to talk about Tenet and spoil it, and I'm going to try to break it down the way I see this movie. It's going to be a lot. It's going to sound weird and nerdy, and this is just how I see the movie. First of all, Tenet is a video game movie. It's a Metrovania-style video game movie. For those who don't play games, Metrovania, it's like a linear story, but you come across things that you can't unlock yet unless you go further in the story, acquire an upgrade or two, and then you can come back and open it. So let's say you see a green chest and a blue chest, and in the beginning you can only open blue, then you get an ability, then you can open green chest. That's essentially what Tenet is to me. So starting at the beginning, you have the protagonist. He doesn't really say much, as the movie starts. And then he runs into these guys or ladies that aren't really that important in the story. They don't really have a name, but the first guy he sees on the boat gives him the symbol, gives him the word Tenet, that unlocks a door. Then he meets the scientist, and she gives him his first quote unquote ability. The bullet training that he goes through. They call it instinct. She tells him to feel it, and he learns how to catch bullets, and he starts understanding the whole aspect of dropping something or picking something up, the whole inversion. It's his first upgrade as the protagonist. Then he meets Neil, and Neil, the way Neil looks at him, Neil knows who he is already, and he knows what he likes to drink. It's like his first time. It's like seeing him again for the first time. And Neil is player two. His partner in crime going forward in this adventure. They meet Priya, and Priya is actually the one that gives him his name, the protagonist. She looks at him and says, "You are the protagonist," and boom, that's his name. That's the name we get going forward. His next upgrade is not a major upgrade, but he meets Sir Michael Crosby for lunch, and the upgrade is clothes. It's basically cash. He gives him the credit card. He says, "You can talk the part, but you got to look the part." So he gets new clothes, and it's a minor upgrade, but it's an upgrade. Fast forward to the Freeport scene, when him and Neil are, unlocking the doors and everything. When they walk into the room and he sees the bullet holes, from his training of the understanding the bullet training, he sees the bullet holes and he sees it move again, and he's like, "Don't touch that." But it's also his first time seeing a turnstile. He doesn't know what that is yet, and that whole sequence plays out. You have one person inverted and all that, and it's very confusing, especially the first time you watch it. It's very confusing. He's confused as to when the guy blows out under the shutter doors, but it's something to think about going forward for the protagonist, because he's like, okay, I know the event didn't happen yet. That's what he tells Neil. But what is a turnstile? He doesn't know what a turnstile is. And then as the story continues, he understands what a turnstile is when he gets to the highway scene. He interacts with Sater and everything for the plutonium-241. And the highway scene is when the protagonist really starts figuring things out about his abilities and the abilities around the world. So, the highway scene plays out. He steals the plutonium, and then he gets captured, and you have the interrogation scene, which is probably the most confusing scene in the entire movie, because you have one side backwards and then the other side going forward, and he's so confused. Cat gets shot, and he's getting ready to get shot before Neil and the rest of the team comes in and helps him out. And that's when they break down what the turnstile is, and they also give him a new term, the temporal pincer movement, which is basically Sater's group is going backwards, and then he's going forward. So one team moves forward, he monitors them, and then attacks at the end, moving backwards. That's the temporal pincer movement. So now the protagonist basically has an understanding of the world around him. He has the instinct, he has the money to look good, and he understands what a turnstile is and a pincer movement, what happens in this world. He goes back in time. So you have to understand from the beginning of the movie, he was going forward in time. Neil is going backwards in time. and then when they interact with each other, they're still going forward. After the highway scene, the protagonist goes back to save Kat. They are going back to the beginning of the movie. So they go back to Freeport, and that whole scene plays out again, but he's inverted this time. Everybody still with me? You still with me? Okay. So then he goes to see Priya, and Priya is shocked to see him, and he lets her know, like, in 2 days, you're going to tell me to steal this plutonium. It's not the right thing to do. And she's confused, but she doesn't want to change her agenda. She wants him to take the plutonium and get captured again. That's what Priya wants. And the protagonist, he's trying to change things. He's trying to change events that's going to mess up the entire world. So they go back again. They keep going back. After the whole highway scene, Neil and the protagonist are going back. They're going back to the beginning of the movie. I believe they say they travel back to, it's a week since Freeport, and then they go back another 10 days, basically to the opening opera scene, that we're introduced to in the beginning of the movie. So we're back at the beginning of the movie, and the two teams, they're doing a pincer movement again. Neil is going backwards. The protagonist is going forward. Neil is the second protagonist in this movie. When the protagonist, JDW, when he talks to Priya the second time, she says, "Do you think you're the only protagonist?" And he goes, "Well, yeah." But in reality, there are two protagonists. Neil is the other one. So the whole last section of the movie, it is very confusing. You have one team, the red team, going forward. You have the blue team going backwards. So as the camera changes, sometimes you see things going forward. Sometimes you see things going backwards. And it's kind of to mess with you, but it's also to show you the importance of Neil. Neil is very important in this movie. And he is going backwards, but he's noticed some things. He's been there already. He's done this before. And Neil is the protagonist that's constantly going back in time to change things, while John David Washington's character is always going forward. And Neil sees a lot of things, and he gets in the car and he tries to warn them of different things. And he's also the one who opens the gate for them to get the device at the end. Neil is kind of the hero of the story. Even though everything focused on JDW, I believe Neil is more important. Even towards the end of the movie, Neil has the final say, when the movie is going off. Because he's very important to this story, especially for JDW. JDW assigns Neil to go back in time so that the pincer movement can work. So if JDW is going forward, Neil is constantly going backward. He's like the best soldier they have. And nothing works without Neil because he understands everything that's going on already. And that's why I think of this movie as a video game. You go forward and you get information, and then you go backwards to basically answer questions that you couldn't answer before. And that's what this movie does. They go forward to a certain point. You get all, JDW got all his information, from the highway scene. He started understanding what a turnstile is. And then he and his crew go all the way back to the beginning of the movie where the opera house scene was supposed to happen. They're in a different location, and now they're trying to save the world. I know, it's confusing. I know, it's a confusing movie. Watch it with subtitles. Even at the 2-hour mark, when they're doing that final mission, when the mines are blowing up, when the car is driving past the blue team and the mines are blowing up, you hear somebody say mine. First it's Wheeler, and it says Wheeler, and then it's another person says mine, and it says protagonist. But they're on the blue team, which Neil is on, confirming that he is also a protagonist in this story. That's how I see it. But I know it's a long video. I hope you watched it. What are your thoughts on Tenet? I know a lot of people are confused. They don't understand it. Do you understand the movie? I watched the movie about 5 times now. So I understand it in my way, but I still think it's a video game type movie. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Deuces.